Hey, thanks for joining Next Gen Nerds. We're doing an interview with Patrick Hickey Jr. He is the founder and editor of Legacy Comics. He has written a series of books called Mind Behind the Games, and he currently voice acts for a bunch of different games, but currently he is working on WrestleQuest, which is being developed by Mega Cat Studios and published by Skybound Games. And finally, he's a professor of journalism. And let's just get right into it.
It's great stuff, man. It's stuff that like we're going to be talking to our kids about like 20, 30 years from now. So that's what I'm about, creating stuff that like people want to talk about for years, or getting people into comics that weren't necessarily into comics. It's just like, cuz I mean, most of the stuff that I write there, it isn't like dun dun dun, dun like there isn't like a superhero or anything like this. It's about like people, so there may be like some superpowers involved and stuff, but I mean, like one of like the series that I'm writing right now, Condry's not on like hiatus. It's just like we work like quarterly. So like one quarter I'm doing Condry, the next, so like the comic that I'm doing now is called The Job, and it's about a professional wrestler that loses every match. He's a jobber.
Yeah.
Um
Yep.
and he's the super of his apartment building, and that's how he like makes a living. But like he's got a hot wife and he's got a great car, and people are like, but you're like the super of a building and you wrestle like on weekends for like $50 a match. Like, how do you have all this stuff? And he's like, I rob banks. And they think he's kidding, but his wife is his manager when they wrestle, so she's like his valet, and she comes out with him, and she's like, the sex appeal and stuff like that, and she's a big wrestling fan, and she's always fighting with him, like, use the dragon sleeper, don't use the super kick. And he's just like, I love the super kick. And she's like, you're not that sexy, don't use the super kick, blah 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 blah.
I like
But
it.
like, so she's his manager, but she's also the getaway driver when
Yeah.
they rob banks together, so it's just like that to me. Like, that's a story that like a person that wants to read a good story will read, and somebody that's into comics will be like, it's not a superhero, but it's still pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it's just like all of our comics pretty much, like we have another comic, The Legend of the Night Owl, and it's basically about this old woman that like she hangs outside of her window, like, and she watches like the neighborhood like fall to shit, and she sits outside, like she looks outside the window, and it's just like gang ridden New York, and she drinks her coffee, and she doesn't sleep much, and the city like needs to get cleaned up, and it's gonna get cleaned up, and it'll get cleaned up by like probably the people that are most unlikely to clean it up, but it's just like it just centers around this old woman that just knows everything about everybody. So I mean, that leaves like opportunities for some really fun storytelling, but and at the same time too, it's just like I've spoken to so many people. Like, we worked so hard when we did the business plan for this comic book company, and they were like, if you want to lose a ton of money, have a superhero comic. Put a cape on somebody, it's not going to sell. And I remember, like, there's somebody that doesn't work for us anymore, and the comic they pitched was a superhero comic. And I had a lot of faith in the guy, and I wanted to see him succeed. And I was just like, I'm just letting you know, this is our only superhero book. Because if we're gonna do it and we have to do it, like, we'll do it with you. But like, it's the only one we're gonna do. And it ended up being like we had that conversation before about the lowest 10%.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a part of the lowest 10%. So it's just like it had to go.
Yeah.
So it's just like I think people now want stories that are a little bit more relatable. And this is the thing too. I love when people come to me and they're like, "Oh, that could be like something on like Hulu or like Netflix," or like people want like that extra like layer of realism in comics now. That's why like it's so funny when you see these things about like the sex life of Batman and Catwoman being like
Yes.
on like, because the thing is, it's just like we know so much about these characters now that like we want to know even more. So like a long established like 85-year-old character like Batman is in a lot of trouble, because it's just like, how do you give them more when everyone knows everything about the character? But like in the terms of like a young indie character, you could start slowly peeling away the layers of a character, and that could take 5-10 years, and people will be like, oh, I love how deep the storytelling is. And it's just like, by comparison to like Marvel and DC, the storytelling isn't deep at all, but it's just like they've completely run out of ideas. They can't do like what indie companies are doing now. So it's a really fun time to be a comic book writer, to be honest. If you can run a successful wrestling business, you can run successful any business, because that business is a money pit. But
Oh
the whole
yeah.
thing is, it's just like one of the problems in professional wrestling right now is that like a guy will get paid the same amount for having a great match as he would a terrible match.
Yes.
And back in the day, it was like if the house didn't draw, you didn't get paid nearly as much. And the thing is,
Yep.
like in comics now, you have artists getting paid hundreds, sometimes, you know, $1,000 like a page to do art or to do writing and stuff like that. But the comic doesn't have to sell.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's just like you're eliminating like the hunger of the team. Like I feel like if a team is paid like a solid base pay or a really respectable royalty, and they have a stake in the success of the book, and they have to push the book, and the company has to push the book, and everyone works together, the quality of the completed work is going to be so much different than just somebody being paid like a flat fee to do
Oh
something,
yeah.
you know? So I just
Well,
feel like the Disney acquisition for Marvel is just like Marvel's making a ton of money off of all of these film properties and action figures and stuff like that. So it's just like they're probably making more money off of the film properties and stuff, and the action figures and stuff than they've ever made before.
yes.
So the books don't have to sell the way that they used to sell.
That's true.
So it's just like, wow, you're running a comic book company and you don't have to sell comic books to make money. It's wild.
I think that's going to be the problem they run into, is that all of the movies and the action figures and all that stuff take little bits of these stories that are really, really good that people loved.
Mm-hmm.
At
Yeah.
some point, you're going to catch up with that, and you're going to go,
Yep.
oh shit, we've wasted so much time on garbage storylines. We have
Yep.
nothing else to like steal to make an amazing film, or a compelling film at least, or
Yeah.
at a minimum an enjoyable fun popcorn film, right? At some
Yeah.
point you run out of that steam if you, like you said, you don't have the fire in the team to keep, making the stories great, pushing boundaries and all that stuff. So
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
mean,
If you're running a business, because I joke around with people all the time. It's like I said, I feel like Paul Heyman when Paul
oh
Heyman
yeah.
was running ECW. Like I'm trying to put together teams and like find people that are, either undervaluing themselves, or people that have been undervalued, or people that have no idea how talented they are. Um, I'm really trying to do special stuff, and it's super hard, and it's like a lot of the times it's like managing personalities. And it's like I told you, like I'm in a terminal like in Kansas City, and then a terminal in Phoenix, and I'm just trying to have conversations with people about getting stuff done, and putting your best foot forward and promoting your stuff actively and being consistent and stuff like that. It's so rough, but it's just like, man, I am super proud of like everyone that's on this team now is totally like an ass kicker. So from like my stuff, and then like I mean, we have like by the fall we're gonna have 16 15 16 different books out, and there's not like a bad one among all of them, and it's like right after our Kickstarter got funded, we got contacted by the Bram Stoker estate to do a
Oh, that's cool.
yeah. So like what happened was the Bram Stoker estate gave us access to like 125-year-old notes of Dracula that weren't published. So we published the only Dracula prequel comic that's like in existence, called Renfield Visions of Madness. So it basically takes place like before the Dracula novel starts. Um and it's like I feel like so many people don't know that we did that, and it's just like it's such a special comic. So it's like we have that, and then I mentioned, Legend of the Night Owl, and then like is a super Legend of the Night Owl is like Streets of Rage meets like the Warriors, with like an old lady
Nice.
main character. And then like I mentioned Condry before, which is it's basically like a love letter to like Frank Miller noir. It's about a homeless man that's trying to find out who killed his father. And I told you about The Job. But my video game writing has found a way to like find its way into my comic book stuff too, because right before COVID, I had written a script for a game called Kroom, which is basically like it's this retro game that kind of plays like the original Legend of Zelda.
Okay.
But if Zelda, if Zelda, you hear me? If Link had a gun, so it's like Link has a this character has a gun and a sword. So like it's so much fun. The guy that designed the character model, his name is Pete Paquette, and he was the lead animator on BioShock Infinite.
Oh, that's
He's
sweet.
worked on he's worked on Gladius on Xbox. I mean, super talented guy. He's
Nice.
worked on Overwatch, Madden, but we were doing this sexy little indie game, and then COVID hit, and that kind of slowed it down. So I was just like, I went to him, and I'm like, I wrote the story. Let's use it for a comic. And he was like, okay. So like that's one of our comics. So I mean, we have so much cool stuff. So it's just a matter of, trying to get every day is just a matter of like getting so many moving parts to operate at the same speed. And I mean, I'm sure like you go through the same thing like with your job. It's like teaching. Sometimes I'll be teaching a class and I'm like, if I could just get like 4 or 5 of these kids to like get in the bowl game and like participate and stuff, the whole class dichotomy is going to change, and it's just like it's like that with everything. It's just like it's just harder when you're creating something because it's just like you're putting your butt on the line,
Oh yeah.
so it's like I try and tell people all the time, I'm like, if this comic doesn't sell, then you don't make any money, but then I get stuck with a couple hundred comics that like so it's just like I'm gonna work just as hard as you, probably harder, to sell your work and to promote you as you are, or I'm gonna teach you how to promote yourself. So it's just like it's rough, and it's just like it's the same thing in video games too. When a company takes a risk on a young indie company, you know, and they have to teach them how to market themselves, and they have to like set them up with interviews, and maybe, I mean, how many times has this happened to you where you're watching a Game Informer video, or a G4 video, or a GameSpot or IGN video, where you're like, this game looks really cool, and then they talk to like the developer, and the developer has like zero charisma and can't sell his own game, so it's just like it's so like anyone that wants to get into like the comic book industry or like video games, I would tell them like, before you decide to like take the plunge, try and do content creation by yourself and build your own brand for a year and see how hard it is. See how long it takes you to get to like 5,000 followers. If you can get to like 5,000 followers and then not lose all of them, um then try and do the business, but like it's so hard. People think it's so easy, and then like I told you, everybody wants free stuff, and everyone wants this and everyone wants that, and it's just like it's so hard. Every day is so hard. Like before we started recording, you're like, how are you? I'm like, I'm tired. It's just it's definitely not for everyone, but like the thrill of seeing like one of your games on like the PlayStation Store or the Nintendo eShop, or having someone buy your stuff like in person and ask for a signature, like that's like the bee's knees. Or having some like adorable little girl like offer to give you like coffee creamer, like that's where it's at. That's what it's about, so it's like but you have to wait for those moments. You have to earn them, and not everybody gets them. It's so funny because it's like, as I'm talking to you, someone literally just sent me a picture from PAX West. I'm not sure if you could see it. Yeah,
Oh
from PAX
yeah.
West, of me. I have them in a headlock,
In a
but
headlock.
it's like I have no idea who this person is. I took so many pictures during PAX West, and it's just like they posted this an hour ago. So it's like yeah, I'm tired. Yeah, I'm working super hard, but yeah, like that made the rest of my day.
Yeah.
So it's just like I try and one of my favorite baseball players of all time is Ichiro. Um,
Oh yeah, he played for the Mariners. That's where I'm from.
I love Ichiro.
Yeah, he's so
And
good.
I love Ichiro is because Ichiro will bite, scratch, and claw to get to first base.
Yep.
And then once he gets to first base, he will bite, scratch, and claw to get to second base. And then to third. And then on in the outfield, he's just like smooth, great arm, covered, the outfield beautifully. So just like making things look as easy as possible, but putting in the time and energy to make things appear a lot easier than they do. So it's just like a lot of the people that work with me will be like, "Oh, you're having a great time," and I'm like, "Yes, I am." I was like, but everything that I do is like calculated, thought through. Um, I value my time like incredibly. I try and be as efficient with my time as possible. I try not to waste my time, you know. Um, but yeah, it's like it's so funny because like on the way to Seattle, I listen to Jeff Jarrett's podcast all the time. I've loved
Okay.
Jeff's work forever. Like I had a poster of Jeff Jarrett in my bedroom when I was a teenager. So like when he was attached to this project, I was just like, this is awesome because and he was having a conversation about Will Ospreay and Kevin Nash, and it was like
Oh yeah.
how Will Ospreay may be like the best wrestler in the world right now, so to speak, but Kevin Nash is still making more money than him, and he hasn't wrestled in like a decade. So the thing is,
Yeah.
do you want to be the best or do you want to make money? So the thing is, it's just like it's so hard, and I feel like the sooner you make that decision, the happier you'll be.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
but I do feel like you have to do a little bit of like if you want to make money, uh you have to have a high product.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
you have to have a high end product. But there's a lot of people out there that are just doing like such amazing work, but like have no idea that like they could be making more money or just promoting themselves in a slightly different way or just doing like one or two small things that could like change their life forever and turn a hobby into, something that like could be their retirement money. Sometimes you're so close. And that's why like consistency is so important. That's why like for the past 20 years I've been writing nonstop for 20 years because it's just like you don't know. You don't know what's going to end up being your big success. And I tell my writers all the time, like, if one of my comics doesn't sell, then I change the game plan. And then if the game plan doesn't work again, then that character has to die. Because if you're a writer, that's,
Yeah.
I'll have one of these writers tell me like, oh, the series is really going to heat up around like issue 30. And I'm just like, how do you know you're going to get to 30? Do you know how much a company is going to have to invest in you
Yeah.
for it to get to 30? Like, no,
30's
you've
a
got to make
lot.
every issue. Yeah, you've got to make every issue count. So it's just like, and if you can get to like, man, I feel like if you can get a series past like number 2, that's a success. Because like I have content creators that go to me, oh, we've written 100 issues of the series, and I'm like, yeah, but how many have you sold? You know, how many have you finished? How many have you sold? It's hard to have conversations with people like that, because then they'll be like, oh well, you know, I believe in this, and I'm like, I'm sure you do, but it's super rough, and it's just like the second that somebody comes to the conclusion, like with me, if they're working with me and they're like, I want to do this just for fun, and I'll go, okay, that's great. So if you want to do this just for fun, then we don't need to release like hundreds of issues of this. If you want to do this and it's just for fun, and I feel like I could market it and I feel comfortable that I could sell 200 issues, then that's all we're going to print.
Yeah.
But if you want to do this and you want to do that, then like let's print as many as like the company can afford, and let's like really do it. So it's just like I love having like that real conversation with people, but the problem is a lot of people don't have that real conversation with themselves. They don't know. They don't know if it's just a passion project or if it's something that they could do every single day.
Well, I think a
So
lot of people are just afraid of it. Uh,
hmm
Like, especially
very
with
true.
that, you're putting yourself out there
Oh
quite a
yeah.
long ways, and you want to say, well, this is just my hobby. It's
Yep.
not something I take
Yep.
super seriously. And and yeah, recognize like having that conversation with yourself is probably, I mean, that's got to be incredibly difficult for someone who's really putting their neck out there. Like, I
Yep.
mean,
Absolutely.
uh yeah, especially if it's your livelihood kind of thing. Like some of the people,
Yeah.
like that could be life changing if that hits right. If that hits right,
hmm
you could hit a good streak of books or a good streak of content, and now your whole life has changed, right? So
Yep.
um
Absolutely. I tell my creators, I'm like, every day before I go to bed, I look at myself in the mirror and I go, you're not there. You're not where you need to be yet. You're not there yet. And it's just like, and then it's like, okay, so what did you do today? You did this. And it's like 4 or 5 small things. And then it's just like 2 or 3 months goes by. And then I'm saying the same thing, and then I'm like, but wait, now I got like 30 little things that I'm doing that are all leading me to where I need to be doing. And the thing is, it's just consistency. So it's just like, I'll do stupid stuff with my team where I'll be like, it's Sunday. I'm like, let's see who could sell the most comics today. You know, like let's go on Facebook, let's go on Twitter, let's throw our links around. Let's see who sells the most comics today.
Yeah.
And we've done it like a bunch of times, and it's just like so far every time it's me.
Yeah.
And the and thing is, I tell them it's like because, and it's not because they can't sell, it's just because I've been writing books and writing articles for 20 years. So I try and explain to them that it's just like, if you guys just stay in it and you continue to push every day, 2 or 3 years is going to go by super fast. Now you have 2 or 3 years worth of people knowing that like every day you're going to push your shit, and then they're going to want to support you. So it's
Yep.
just like, I know how hard it is for people when they just start, man. I remember doing, like, I did a ColecoVision con, and my book wasn't even out yet, and I sat at that table and I was by myself for like 3 hours, and like I ended up like making some great like connections with people, but like people were like, your book's not even out yet, why are you here, you know? And I'm just like, I'm trying to get my name out and stuff, and like, but now the two people that I was like side by side with at the booth, they've ended up like writing forwards for me and stuff. So it's just like, there's so much like hidden currency out there that like if
Oh
you
yeah.
invest the time in yourself. So it's just like perfect example, this conversation, this is like
Yeah.
earned currency, you know, because
I,
of like we shared a small moment together, and then boom, then we have this. So it's just like being, you going to cons gives you like an avenue to create content. Me going to
yeah.
cons helps me make connections and stuff. So it's just like, that's like a lesson, like that should be a lesson to like any entrepreneur, that like if you want to do something, you got to be where you need to be, you
Oh,
know?
well,
So
that's what I tell. So it's funny because working in the engineering field and doing management and stuff like that, people a lot of the times younger people, and I do a mentorship like after school program thing, and like people will ask like, what should I do when I'm in college or at the end of high school? And I said, I always say, you need to figure out, you need to know somebody. So you need to make
yep,
connections with people. And that doesn't mean through LinkedIn. Don't send them a LinkedIn friend request and then never talk. Like, I mean,
yep,
go out and a lot of the times apply for internships. An interview with the CFO about finance. Anything you can get your foot in the door to talk to somebody at that company or at the company you want to work at is the way you get in, because
mm-hmm,
there's a million other people and you need to be one out of 10 that are actually doing that work and pushing yourself. That's the other thing, is a lot of people, like you said, the developer gets out there, they have no charisma and no idea how to sell themselves. That's the hardest thing to do, is find somebody to know that can get you that foot in the door, to jam your foot in the crack, just to get a
absolutely.
foothold and get a chance. Because I mean, it's so hard to do that in general. That like,
It's so funny.
yeah,
So funny that you said that, because like I remember like at my interview for NBC, like I mean there was people from like UCLA, NYU, Georgetown, Mizzou, all like interviewing for the same position as me. And I remember going in, and I had like a suit that I had bought like a couple of hours before that wasn't like tailored properly and stuff like that. And I had taught the whole day, and just, I, one of my old teachers got me in, and he was like, I know somebody, like I put in a good word for you, blah blah blah. And I sit down and I'm sweating profusely, and they're just like, why do we hire you? And I'm like, cause, and I said it flat out, like I was like, cause I'll run through a fucking wall for this job. And the guy was like, he's like, we won't ask you to do that. And I'm like, but I will. And then at the end of the interview, he's like, yeah, we'll call you back in 2 weeks. And I told my wife, and my wife was like, maybe they will, maybe they won't. You don't know, blah blah blah. And 2 weeks later, they called back, and I ended up wearing the same suit that I wore to the interview the first day. It's like the only suit I had and stuff. And I remember going into 30 Rock, and just seeing everyone was like dressed down and just chilling out. And I was like, oh my God. And the guy was like, hey, you don't have to wear a suit here. He's like, you're an NBC. Like, we just want you to work really hard. And the next day I wore like a Joe Namath, like Jets jersey and pair of jeans and stuff. But it was just like having the person get me in the door, and then just me being bold and saying what needed to be said. So many people are so scared that they're going to ruffle feathers and stuff, and the thing is, you're going to ruffle feathers regardless.
Yep.
There's always going to be people that hate on you. There's always going to be people that find holes in like your wizardry and your business plan and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you just got to trust yourself, you know? So yeah, man, that's some great advice. Anyone that you're mentoring is in like super good hands, because it's like, that's a big thing. It's like just being willing to put the work in, and then like again having somebody like, what do they call it, like they call it in education a lot of times, do you have a rabbi? Like, do you have
Oh
somebody
yeah.
that you like look to, like who's your rabbi? Like I remember when I first started teaching, somebody said to me, who's your rabbi? And I'd be like, what do you mean? Like, oh, who do you share an office with? Who do you talk to? And I'm like, oh, that person. Like, oh, that's your rabbi. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, but it's like having somebody, that you could bounce ideas off of, and someone that is like invested in your success, because that's the thing too. There's so many people out there that want you to be successful, but they don't want you to be more successful than they are.
It's funny because that reminds me of a childhood friend of mine, man. We kind of like didn't really talk for a few years, and then I ran into him and I found out he was like, living under a bridge, coding on a laptop that, he had to like plug in at the local Starbucks. And I was like, dude,
Oh, I love it.
just come and live at my house. He got a job, and then he's the one who got me the foot in the door at Microsoft. Like, he was the
See.
dude who was like, hey man, this guy knows how to work on PCs and he can do all this stuff, yada, yada, yada. And that was my first
Hmm.
job there, was just building up PCs, putting images on them, just setting them up for people who were coming in. And I mean, over the last 10 years, I've moved from, like nobody in there to a full-time employee to now
Yeah, man.
managing a bunch of stuff. And like, he got me that tiny foot in the door, right? Like, just wedged my foot in enough.
And then you kicked it through.
Yeah, exactly. Then you just got the booted down the door. And I don't know if I don't think I would have had those same opportunities had he not been there to jar that door open just enough for
The
me to
thing,
get it.
the best part is he probably wouldn't have had the opportunities that he had if it wasn't for you. So like,
That's
that's a good
that's what
story, man.
that's what he said. And now he runs his own damn company. One question for you:
Yeah,
anything
yeah,
you've
yeah.
ever done that hit the cutting room floor that you wish would have gotten out?
Oh, let's see. Wow. There's a lot of stuff I think in WrestleQuest that may not make it. I don't know. Because I've done so much VO for WrestleQuest. I mean, like over 100 characters and stuff like that. But in the Padre, when we were doing the beta version of the game, there was like a code um where you could change the outfit of the Padre to like a Monty Python character. And I forgot, it was like the Padre was like in like this red costume, and I forgot what it was that I said, but it was like in reference to like an old Monty Python skit. And I was pretty sure that it was in the Steam version, like, and the developers were like, oh, it's in the Steam version. And it was just like when you did the code, the Padre switched into like that red Monty Python character, and I said like the line from the Monty Python skit, like in the Monty Python voice, but it didn't make the Nintendo Switch version, because like I'm
Oh,
like, am I putting it in right? Blah blah blah. I forgot for the late, because it's late. My brain is mush, but it was just like it was that, and then there was another thing, in the Padre, where there was like a shack in the woods behind the castle that like you could only get to if you like burnt like a tree down. Like, it was like no one could ever find it. Like the average gamer would never be able to find it.
yeah.
But the house was modeled after like the house in the Evil Dead.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, and what happens is like as soon as you open up the door, there's like 10 zombies. And if you kill all the zombies, like I said something along the lines of like, I'm all about chewing bubble gum and kicking ass, and I'm all out of gum, like from They Live,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
obviously like Duke Nukem. And that was in the game up until like the last second, and
Ah.
I'm like, that needs to stay in. Like, that's the thing though too. A lot of people probably haven't played the Padre, Um, but if you like Alone in the Dark, and if you like the original Resident Evil, it's a lot of fun. Um,
I,
and the second one has a lot of good stuff in it too. But just like the stuff that I got to do in that game, I don't think a lot of first time voice actors like would get the chance to do. So yeah, as far as like cutting room floor, like Monty Python stuff, and then like I still don't know if that house is in the Switch version. I may have to like play tomorrow or like the day after. But I know that line definitely got cut out because like the lawyers were definitely like anything that was like referencing like another IP or whatever they were taking out because they were an indie company and they didn't want to get sued. But yeah, those
yeah.
are definitely two things
I like how
that
you
would have been
brought
so
back
cool if they
Sam
got in.
Raimi into this.
Yes. Hmm.
We talked about him in the
Yeah,
first
but
like 10 minutes, and we're
when
bringing him
they
back.
showed me that house, because I did a lot of bug testing on the Padre too, and when they showed me that house, I'm like, "That's the Evil Dead house," and they're like, "Yeah, it is," and I'm just like, "Oh, that's so cool," you know. So it's funny too, because like the first room that you have to explore in the Padre is it's basically the attic in Alone in the Dark. It's modeled like
Oh,
90%. So it's just like there's so many fun Easter eggs in that game. But yeah, as far as like cutting room floor, yeah, anytime you can get a Monty Python reference in something, I'm down with that. And the fact that it got cut out was kind of hit me right here. So, but yeah,
all
that's
right,
that.
man.
Thank you
All
so
right, man.
much.
Have a good one, and it was great seeing you. And I really hope WrestleQuest and Legacy Comics does good, man.